The next topic of discussion is diversity, equity, and inclusivity in legal profession, breaking the myth. We have our panelists here with us. Without any further ado, I'll invite them on the stage. I'll do a quick round of introductions and they can take from there. We first have Ms. Aparna Mittal. Ms. Aparna Mittal, with over 19 years of professional experience, is one of the leading advisors in the area of diversity and inclusion, gender impact investing. She has also worked in the sector of anti-sexual harassment. Her industry knowledge and expertise spans a diverse range of sectors, including hotels and hospitality, information technology, hospitals and healthcare, pharmaceuticals, telecom, wholesale industries, and many more. We also have with us Ms. Aastha Bhateja. She's an associate at SAM. She's an expert in securities law, corporate law, mergers and acquisitions. We also have Kritikar Srivastava. Kritikar is a director at IDIA. At IDIA, Kritikar heads the National Scholar Development Vertical, CHAMPS. He has also conducted the annual IDIA Diversity Survey in the leading national law universities and co-authored the survey reports. He also oversees the operations of the Hyderabad, Odisha, UP, Pune, Tamil Nadu chapters. We also have with us Ms. Pallavi Saluja. Pallavi is the editor at Bar and Bench. She joined the Bar and Bench in 2011 and has been writing about the Indian legal market. She has covered law firm and in-house stories, litigation stories from High Courts and the Supreme Court. It's a pleasure to have you all here. I would leave it to you.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us on a Sunday afternoon. I'm Pallavi. I'm the co-founder of Bar and Bench. And I'm hoping whoever sitting here does read it. So I'm the moderator today for this session, and my panel is going to introduce themselves as we go by. So our topic today is diversity, equity, and inclusion in the legal profession, breaking the myth. So what is DII? DII is about creating a workspace where everyone feels valued, respected, and is given equal rights, equal opportunities to grow in the profession. When we talk about diversity, we usually end up focusing a lot more on gender diversity, but there are other forms of diversity. We have persons with disability, socioeconomic background, sexual orientation, gender identity. So why diversity matters? Diversity matters because people from different backgrounds come with different views and come up with different ideas and solutions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about gender diversity, and then my panel is going to talk about other forms of diversity. There has been a sea change in gender diversity in last 15-20 years, but I'm going to throw in some numbers for you to see how much that has changed. So if you look at the stats at kids entering law school, the number is almost equal. Equal number of girls and boys are joining law schools. Equal number of girls and boys are graduating from law schools, and they all join the profession together. But as the years go by and as they grow in the profession, the number starts coming down drastically, actually, when they go up the ladder. I'm going to tell you some numbers from the litigation space. We have a total of 268 judges in the Supreme Court, and we have had only 11 women judges. Presently, we have 34 judges, including the CJI, but only 3 women judges. And we are going to get our first CJI in 2027, only for 36 days. Again, if we look at High Court numbers, we have about 111 women judges across 24 High Courts. And leading the way in gender diversity in High Courts is Punjab and Haryana High Court, followed by Madras and then Bombay. And when we look at women senior advocates, we have about 549 lawyers who have been designated as senior advocates, and the number of women are only 31. Across India, we have more than 3,000 senior advocates, and only mere 4.1% is women. So that's the progress we've made all these years. Now, for other forms of diversity also, I'll move on to the panel. Aanchal, would you introduce yourself and share your experience with diversity.
Yes. Hello, everybody. I am Aastha Bhateja. I am 100% visually impaired. In terms of my introduction, I graduated from National Law School, Bangalore in 2023, and I'm the first 100% visually impaired person to graduate from there. After that, I joined a law firm, and I'm presently practicing in telecommunication, media, and technology area. In terms of my experience with diversity, I will just like to cite some anecdotes. Okay, I lost my eyesight in 2016. Before that, I could see. So I was a newbie in this area. So I was also very keen on helping other people who might not have that much exposure. So this is an anecdote from somewhere in February, not February actually, yeah, February 2017. I called up the heads of Gram Panchayats from about 300 villages around my city to ask them what is the number of visually impaired people in their villages and what are they doing. Answers were mostly there are 5 or 6, and in terms of what they do, kya hi karenge madam. Okay. Fast forward to 2020, Karnataka High Court. I was in my 3rd year in law school. I had applied for an internship. They turned down the request informally, saying that you are blind, we don't have the resources to accommodate you. Cut to 2021. A Supreme Court judge, I shall not name, his secretary called me up and asked me, Madam, 4-wheeler chahiye kya? After my internship request got accepted. And I was wondering कि Supreme Court आजकल cars देने लग गया क्या interns को? And I thought a little and I was like, sir, do you mean a wheelchair? And then he goes like, yeah, same thing. Okay. Then cut to 2022, a law firm that I shall not name. I was trying to convince them to let me install a screen reader software on my computer so that I can like work with the softwares at their firm. And they told me that that will not be possible because that might lead to certain viruses in our system. Cut to 2023, last year, I went to watch Sam Bahadur in a cinema hall, and there was one Gora guy who comes and asks me, what is the problem that you have, madam? And I was like, I don't have a problem, sir. I have a disability. So I cited 4 examples, both from urban and rural context, both from private sector as well as from the public sector, to explain what my experience with inclusivity has been. It is just glaring lack of knowledge. The idea that people like me are not expected in public spaces, nobody is ready for it, and it honestly starts with awareness. I am not imputing lack of sensitivity on anybody. I am just imputing lack of awareness because I would like to believe that that is the case. And that has been primarily my experience with inclusivity, which is basically that people are not aware and people are generally not prepared to face people from any diverse background. They are just used to having able-bodied and elite upper class men most of the times in public spaces. So yeah.
Kritikar, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, hi. I'm Kritikar. I've been working with IDIA for over a couple of years now. I graduated from NUJS Calcutta in 2018. I worked with a law firm for a couple of years after that. My experience with IDIA, so Professor Bashir, the late Professor Bashir, he started IDIA about 10 years ago with a goal that law as a tool for change should be students from marginalized and backwards communities should be given access to these tools so that they can go back and work for their own communities, and the change which happens there is kind of organic as opposed to privileged communities going and helping them out. The change is stronger when it is more organic. Another really important reason why he started IDIA was he felt that Indian law schools, especially the NLUs, were becoming increasingly elitist for a variety of reasons which I will get into later. most of the students who were coming into law schools were from English medium schools, tier 1 and tier 2 cities, and mostly very affluent families where at least one or both parents had like a lot of higher education and spoke English and such. So what happened in the classrooms, the different perspectives which should be coming in classrooms was not there. So I mean, there are a variety of reasons why these law schools are becoming extremely elitist, and this every step of the process. So consider a student from a rural background. First of all, the first process, which is the law entrance examinations, CLAT, which itself is in English, right? Then you have to go to a coaching center, pretty much. I mean, that is the reality right now. And all these coaching centers are then in urban areas. So first of all, the student who's anyway does not know English and has to prepare for that, then he has to take the extra burden of going to somehow getting his parents to pay up to go to a tier 1 or tier 2 city to even get to prepare. Nowadays, there is online classes, all these coaching centers offer that. But again, I mean, then you need to have the proper infrastructure in the village you're living. Internet, laptops and such. That is the law entrance examination. You get to college and then you see again, so fees is really high. Again, also, sorry, I did not mention this, but even the CLAT application fees. The CLAT application fees is 4,000 rupees, and for SC/STs it's 3,500. Whereas if you see other main big Indian examinations like JEE or NEET, the examination fee the application fee would be like 1,000 rupees. So I mean, they're creating these barriers every step of the way for someone someone who's not from a socio-economically privileged background. Then you get to law school, even the academics is in like English, the co-curriculars is in English, all the important co-curricular activities in law school such like mooting or debating, they're not only the English but they're also, I mean, they're public speaking activities. Which a student from like a rural background or a Hindi medium background might not have had access to. Someone who's from a good school will not have access to that. So I mean, again, there are barriers at every step of the way, and I mean, it's not like that these students don't have merit, but these just artificial barriers they have to get over. We have, I mean, like these law schools are replete with stories of people who, not just IDIA scholars, but people who come from like marginalized backgrounds, and given the proper support system, which we at IDIA try to do for our scholars, have gone on to do very cool things and very successful things in their lives. For now, I think I'll stop here. Yeah.
Okay, Aparna.
Thanks, Pallavi. As many of you know, I was working as a partner in a law firm doing mergers and acquisitions. I worked there for almost, 13, 14 years. And one thing I realized, interacting with clients is that anybody who was different from the majority was not there in the room. There were very few women. There was no person who was from the LGBT community and out publicly, so there was no trans people. There were no trans people around. There was no person with disability. In fact, one of the law firms I worked at, our office was on the 9th floor, and the lift would shut at 9:30, 10. So you had to walk down. And once we had a client meeting, जो client हमारे दफ्तर आए थे, he had a fracture, and it was a long negotiation. We forgot. Everybody just forgot that it was already 10:30 at night. And it was so embarrassing because the gentleman had to walk down 9 floors just to go home. And it struck me that our social spaces, how we conduct our business, whether it's a college, it's a university, it's a company, it's a judiciary, we are just not prepared. The majority has made the systems and frameworks and policies for the majority. The lens which Pallavi talked about, D&I lens, thinking about everyone, not just the majority, is missing. And as Kritikar, Achal and Pallavi already said, this is not just about gender. It could be somebody who does not speak English. It could be somebody who comes from a different socio-economic background. But अगर आप उस नज़रिए से दुनिया को नहीं देखेंगे, it will be very difficult for you to understand who are you excluding. So through my work now, because I set up Samana in 2018, the idea was how do you really create framework, systems, policies, processes. She talked about awareness, workshops to create awareness and really tool organizations and leaders to make that change. Whether it's a company, it's a law firm, any kind of business, how do you really integrate changed processes and systems. It could be a policy, it could be a benefit. I mean, it's really embarrassing to sit here in 2024 and to hear of the unfortunate experiences my co-panelists have had. कि आपको wheelchair के बारे में और four-wheeler में फ़र्क नहीं पता. You have not even made the basic courtesy to Google it if you don't know. In fact, she is very kind. She is saying, that they are not aware, but I think it's actually lack of empathy and lack of even basic human courtesy that you extend to somebody else. So, unfortunately, ये सब चीज़ें नहीं होनी चाहिए, पर होती हैं. So that's why a lot of people try and create those systems and frameworks कि आपको नहीं पता, आप नहीं कर सकते, तो आप एक consultant को hire करिए, who will do these things. So in the past 6 years, that's what I've been trying to do, that, whether it's gender, it's LGBT, it's persons with disability, religion, caste, I mean, अपना WhatsApp उठाइए, रोज़ सुबह 4 WhatsApp आते हैं, उसमें कितना मजाक बनता है, किसी और religion का, किसी महिला का, क्यों हो रहा है ये? And I think my only call to the audience today is that how long will you be a passive consumer to things which are not okay, और आप सब कुछ कर सकते हैं जिससे कि थोड़ा बदलाव आ सके in the world around you.
I think we all need to be sensitized and mindsets have to change. I'm going to go to Aanchal again. Aanchal, I want you to tell us, why do you think, or what do we understand, why do we need inclusivity?
Right. Inclusivity basically means that you have an open mind and you let everybody in. That you are not just a choir of the people who are at the upper rungs of the society. That you engage with everybody. For example, the perspectives that a woman could bring to the table, a person from the queer community could bring to the table, a person from the Dalit Bahujan Adivasi could bring to the table. That perspective cannot be brought to the table by a person who's, let's say, who does not belong to that category. The idea of letting stakeholders speak for themselves is extremely important. And the one point that, like a special call to all the corporates, is that do not treat inclusion just as an instrumental goal, that you put it on your website saying that we have these many women, we provide maternity leaves, we have these many persons with disability, we have these many queer people, we have these many people from the Dalit Bahujan Adivasi community. It's not just a web page for you, it's a question of life and death for somebody. Again, the argument from corporates could be that we are not an NGO, we are not the government, why are we obligated to include? I think it would change if you start looking at inclusion not just as a tokenistic practice of adding an extra web page to your website, but as an intrinsic value, because having people from different diversities around just makes other people who are not from those identities sensitive and sensitized, and it just helps in a lot of ways actually, in everything ranging from reducing stress to, let's say, just interacting with people from different walks of life is just going to broaden your perspective. So for me, inclusion is important because it is both an intrinsic as well as an instrumental goal. Again, not discounting the fact that the web page on We Hire Inclusively is very important for optics for law firms and other corporates, but it should also be seen as a goal in itself, not just a means to an end, but an end itself.
Yeah. Basically, it should not be just a tokenism. So, quickly, just because we're speaking with Aanchal, I just wanted to mention in 2022, we'd done a law school survey where we got 40 persons with disability in law schools across, where what they told us was, in law school, we feel lonely because people without disabilities do not treat us normally. Academic inclusion will help over time, but I'm hoping for social inclusion. Law schools must sensitize all their members, less social exclusion and indirect discrimination will be the norm. These are some of the responses that we got while recording challenges faced by 40 students with disabilities across 18 national universities. So coming back to Aparna, would you want to start with what are the major challenges that we face?
I think there are three major challenges. One is that there is a lack, I won't even call it lack of awareness, I think this is an arrogance because you think that only you can do the job and nobody who is different from you can do the job. You believe that you are better able in some ways to do the job, which is where I think that's the first fundamental problem. The amount we judge people, we judge a transgender person. Now, I don't know how somebody's gender will really impact how they will draft an agreement. There is no correlation, right? How they argue in court has no correlation to their gender. So I think the first challenge is arrogance. We don't think of people as equal. We think they are different and they are lower than us, which is what we need to change. Then of course is awareness, that conscience that we can do something for people. And as Achal said, not from a charitable perspective. This is not CSR, this is not being an NGO. This is about recognizing that people have different skill sets and everybody can contribute to the job. I mean, there was a global, I'll give a small anecdote, in Europe, they were making an airbag, which they thought was the best airbag. That airbag, when it got exported to South Korea, it deployed, but it could not save the life. Why? Because they realized that they only tested it on bodies which were 6 feet in a particular build. They had not tested it on people whose physical build was different. So if your eventual consumers are going to be people from all walks of life, why should you not really involve them in the production of goods and services? The human angle is there, of course, but I think that understanding that everybody can contribute, because what is merit? Merit is opportunity multiplied by potential. तो अगर आप opportunity दे ही नहीं रहे हो because you're sitting on this pedestal saying, oh my God, somebody who's transgender वो काम कैसे करेगा, somebody who has a disability वो काम कैसे करेगा, then you have just closed the door to your own learning. And the third thing is that even if some people who want to do it, because there are very less, less credible information about success stories. That's because the media does not give it enough information. Nobody knows how to do it. If you ever go to Lemon Tree Hotel, I think 50% of their workforce is people who have either cerebral palsy or autism. And their turnaround time, their proficiency is higher than somebody who does not have it. So I think the biggest challenge then is kaise kare? How do we do it? We are so scared. We just don't know how to change it. But I think that's where you have to put your mind together. And we're in 2024, we're talking about India GDP touching, I don't know how many trillion. If that can be done, why आप चंद्रयान में भेज सकते हो तो आप why can you not create better policies, infrastructure in your own company or office? Even if it's a 10 people office or a 200, 400 person law firm, it is not rocket science. You just have to put your mind. So I think it's arrogance, it's lack of awareness, then a lot of condescension and just negating and invisibilizing people and their potential, and of course how to do it. And in fact now as consultants we see there are so many best practices, like a ramp. Yesterday I was reading somebody who uses a wheelchair. He was called for a conference in one big college in Delhi. वहाँ पे उन्होंने रैंप नहीं था तो एक लकड़ी का पट्टा खड़ा कर दिया कि आप इस पे व्हीलचेयर लेकर जाओ. मतलब ये तो बेसिक ह्यूमन सेंसिटिविटी मैं क्या बोलूँ, इट्स जस्ट एम्बैरेसिंग टू इवन रिकाउंट दीज स्टोरीज. So I think, Pallavi, the challenge starts from arrogance to lack of awareness, to really lack of knowing how to do it. At least that portion we can solve. But arrogance, so you have to, solve it yourself in the heads of people who think that people who are different, they have no ability or they can't do anything.
Comes back to the mindset. But sorry, before that, also can you tell us, because you are in this space, what is the current state of diversity you see in the legal profession especially?
I think it's very low. Whether you look at the judiciary, you look at courts, you look at law firms, you look at companies and their legal departments, only perhaps in one area we have seen that there are more women, especially with corporate law, etc. coming in, but how many of them really reach the top? Not because they are not able, but because there are systemic barriers. Somebody who is on the curve of maternity, usko promotion nahi denge, or they'll say, oh, she is now a mother, let's not put her on a fast track. So those issues are there, but gender at least has done a little bit better. Other than women, trans persons, there is hardly any representation. LGBT persons, global studies show 11% of the population is from the LGBT community. But are 11% of them out in the law firms and the companies? No, they are not. So that's an issue. Persons with disability, 1, 2, I mean, just look around the room or look at any corporate space, just 1 or 2, hardly any. And this is, data shows that there are extensive numbers in this country. They are highly talented, with high potential. But unfortunately, the representation is not there. And then other, look at Muslims, look at other religions. Where are they? We look at big numbers, they have 12% of the population, but are they 12% of your classroom? Are they? I mean, you have to see that people are part of the population, but they are not reaching where we are reaching. So there has to be some issue that when they are part of the population, either the same learning opportunities, the same opportunities are not getting to them in the same proportion. Because prorate bhi karenge mathematically, तो उतना representation तो होना चाहिए ना. So look at lower caste, look at socioeconomic backgrounds, look at people who speak languages which are different from Hindi. That representation, unfortunately, if you start mapping it, it's very low.
Kritikar, coming to you, you work with IDIA where you train underprivileged kids to get into law schools, and they have their 5-year journey in law schools. They come from different socioeconomic background, persons with disability. So how do they find it? What are the challenges they face in law schools? Are law schools making enough effort to sensitize law students? What are the major challenges?
Unfortunately, the answer to your question would be probably like a no. I don't think they're doing enough for now. The playing field is really not level for a lot of students who come into law schools, and a lot of it is due to factors like really large factors like the political economy or just government policies, the market. You can't really do, I mean, that is something you have to look at long term, but there's so many small things which can be done every day. If like how Aparna mentioned, there's just a bit of sensitivity at all stages. I mean, I'll give you a very funny example. So in NUJS, when I was there, in my batch and the batch after that, the administration, what they did is they allotted the classroom section according to CLAT rank. Now at the face of it, it just seems like a very seemingly innocuous way of randomizing, but it did not turn out to be that, because when you do allot class sections according to that, it automatically became all the general category students in one section and all the SC/ST category students in one section. Where, I mean, that the very basic level of diversity which should be there in every section for people to get different perspectives during classroom discussion was taken away by even, it was just, there was no intention of doing anything like that, but if you just have that basic level of sensitivity to think a little about these things, it goes a long way. I mean, stuff like a very big problem which law students from poor families face is not getting a stipend at internships. Like again, like I'm saying, there's barriers every step of the way, from going to a different city to prepare for an exam, coming to colleges and then having to go for internships to another cities and not even getting a basic stipend is something, it's a very small thing for like a law firm. Like I think like that should pretty much, I mean, should be the norm. I'm doing my master's right now at DU and at the philosophy department, and a really nice thing I noticed when I went there is in the first class, during the orientation actually, professors asked people who are from Hindi medium backgrounds to come to them separately, and then they created a WhatsApp group, and now they take extra tutorials just to get them online. And the philosophy texts are like way more complex than like a general law text. So the amount of effort a professor has to put in to get the students to the same page, to the same level as other students is a lot higher. And they put in that work. So I mean, these are very small things which can be done at every level. Just, I mean, the playing field would not be level, but at least you can give a step up to like the students who are coming from these backgrounds. So yeah, I mean, that's it.
Aanchal, what would you say is the current status of diversity, and what are the major challenges, whether you want to talk about law school time or your experience with the law firm where you're working?
Since Kritikar was speaking about level playing field, I just, this reminded me of a very funny instance from law school. Law school is in Nagar Bhavi, which basically means a well of snakes. There are a lot of snakes in law school. So when I have a very major snake phobia. So when I went, I was very scared that I could be bitten by snakes. And at around, somewhere around the second year, I wrote to my vice chancellor that there's a lot of fear of snakes and I don't know, I could be bitten. I don't know what's the solution to it. And at that point, we were running on some financial deficit. So our vice chancellor basically turned off all the street lights to save electricity. So all my peers started coming to me and making fun of the situation. They were like, they have created a level playing field now because none of us can see snakes at night because we all are blinded by the lack of street lights. So I think in terms of creating level playing fields, it only gets worse with the time because in law school context at least, again, starting from the mindset, lack of awareness. When I went inside, first question that a librarian asked me was whether I do Braille. They were not aware that there are computers and softwares that help blind people read, etc. Starting from there, it takes a very tangible shape. You would have pathways which are not accessible, you would have buildings which are not accessible, you would have professors who would have inaccessible pedagogies, and they would also not be willing to change their pedagogy to accommodate students inside of classrooms. So at least, given that Kritikar and Aparna both have spoken about gender and socioeconomic backgrounds, in terms of disability, I would at least try to add one more limb. So reasonable accommodation is basically making necessary adjustments in your day-to-day practices and policies to help a person with disability perform at par with other people. Now the problem with reasonable accommodation is that it's a continuous affair. You can't do it one day and the other day you're like, ab nahi karna hai, we are done. So diminishing marginal utility, right? It like helping somebody will give you like less and less happiness and fun with every passing day. But the problem with reasonable accommodation is that you have to give it every day, and that is where people fall foul most of the times. Because when you first time meet a blind person, you're very enthusiastic about helping them, but with time that interest, that happiness, that sense of good deed fades away, and there's nothing left. Now, in terms of addressing this situation with, losing interest in providing reasonable accommodation in time, there is a need to realize that it's not that onerous, that it's not that burdensome as it is thought to be. They're just simple things that you need to do. You don't need to be a managing partner, you don't need to be the Prime Minister of India to make a change. You just need to be a sensitive person. At any stage that you are, you can just take these simple small steps to accommodate somebody in your life.
Thank you, Anchal. Coming back to you, Aparna, what would you say are the 3 important things we need to bring about the change?
Thanks, Achal. So I think 3 things is one, we really need to start using the lens of exclusion in our thinking. It's not the lens of inclusion, it's about the lens of exclusion, which I call it. Who are you purposefully or unknowingly excluding from what you're doing? So if you walk into a building, what is missing there? Right? You have to think, and as Achal rightly said, you cannot imagine it beyond a point. You have to work with people who are experiencing different things in life and bring them in. So one is bring that lens into your thinking, your design thinking, before you create a program or a project or a building or you set up an organization. How can you continuously bring that thinking in? Second is dedication of time and resource. ये tokenism, Women's Day पे एक post डाल दिया, Transgender Day पे एक post डाल दिया, that doesn't work after a point of time. People want credibility, like all of us, we want respect and substantive change. So it is an ongoing process. You have to dedicate time and resource. In today's day of social media, if you're pretending to be inclusive but you're not, that is going to be a problem. Look at a big airline which is being called into question every day because they are so insensitive to persons with disability. They don't have basic systems in place. So I think it's about dedicating resource, and then a third thing is to work with the community. This is not about writing a CSR check and sending it to Pradhan Mantri Kosh. This is not about going on the fields and doing activism. आप जो भी हैं, जहाँ पर भी हैं, in your sphere of influence, आपका RW है, आपका there is a school to which your child goes, there is your own office, there is the court, you can just get slightly more involved. ऐसा क्यों है? Why can't we change it? Little bit of effort from your side. The language we use, why are all our galis only about women and violence against women? हम transgender लोगों का मजाक क्यों बनाते हैं? हम चक्का वर्ड क्यों यूज़ करते हैं? हम सिक्सर वर्ड क्यों यूज़ करते हैं? तो आप क्या मूवीज़ देख रहे हैं? आप क्या कंज्यूम कर रहे हैं? आई थिंक थोड़ा बहुत माइंडफुलनेस की, ये लोग हैं, ये इंसान हैं, उनको भी उतना ही इज्जत का ज़रूरत है जितना आपको है. I think that lens of sensitivity, if that comes in, you can all be change makers. As she's rightly said, you don't have to be the managing partner. You can just be a responsible citizen who is looking at the world around you.
Yes, sensitive. Kritikar, same 3 things that we can do to bring about change.
I think the first thing I would say, at least in law schools, would be to generally foster an atmosphere of sensitivity towards children from like socioeconomically underprivileged backgrounds, in the sense that like you can sensitize students and you can generally just make sure that they're not left out of any activity which you can make sure that they can be participating in. There's no reason for you to not have a debate competition, something as simple as a debate competition in Hindi, right? Or other vernacular languages. So generally an atmosphere of sensitivity where like a student is not being left out of like the social circle of, or basically just have mentorship programs or buddy programs, just to help these students just integrate better in law school. Other things, I think professionally also, we need to make sure that there are not any unnecessary burdens being put on them, such as like I mentioned before, giving stipends, or maybe law firm should also look to go to for their open their recruitment to not just go to for placements to these NLUs, because merit can exist everywhere. So go to other law schools. I mean, there's so many talent comes from all over the country. So I mean, these are the things which I guess which can be done to just make the overall fraternity more inclusive.
Achal?
Actually, I don't have three things. I have just one word to say. It's unlearn. The idea of merit is very flimsy. My father always gets very fussy about me waking up early in the morning, and he sometimes jokingly remarks, if I were the Prime Minister of India, I would defenestrate all the people who don't wake up at 5 a.m. That's his idea of merit. So an upper caste would design merit as per their standards. Man would design his merit as per his standards. An elite person from urban areas, let's say, would design merit as per their own standards. So unlearn, shed those prejudices. Nobody is different. The starting point of all our conversations is you and I. That you come from a different place, I come from a different place, you are lesser than me, I am better than you. These are very flimsy ideas, and this, like in disability scholarship, we often talk about the idea of temporary able-bodiedness, that all of us at some point will be disabled due to a fracture maybe, or old age, or just laziness sometimes. Anything could be the reason. But the point is that our ideas about who is good and who is not good are very flimsy. So we need to shed these ideas and have a fresh slate with which we approach people. We speak to them, we understand their experiences, we learn from them, and then we just don't learn, but we also act up. Those small steps of inclusion. And it's not that you start believing that somebody is dependent on you. Trust me, nobody is dependent on anybody. Nobody's world stops if you stop helping them out. Just that world becomes a better place if there is mutual codependence. And take those small steps, because as I said before, inclusion is not that onerous. Just going a small step, like Kritikar mentioned, the professors creating a WhatsApp group to have a conversation with Hindi medium students separately is not that much of an ask, but it can remarkably change somebody's life. For me, there have been small sentences at points that some professors have said, and they have remarkably changed my life. There have been small distances that my peers have helped me cover that have meant the world to me. So it's not that onerous, and it's all about unlearning first and then learning from a fresh perspective by speaking with the stakeholders.
Thank you, Achal. Very nicely put. So we've discussed challenges, what all we can do, but I would still request my panelists if they can share like a nice episode or a short story where somebody went out of their way to help or to make you feel included, any in your experience over the years. Just to end it on a positive note.
Yeah, sure. We actually do have so many of these positive stories which come out of law schools and the legal fraternity every day. So I'll give you the story of Kartika Annamalai. Was an IDIA scholar and 1 year my senior at NUJS. So she came from a village in Karnataka where the main profession was, there was a stone quarry. So basically the village was, the entirety of the village, all of them worked at the stone quarry. And when she was about in the 4th year, the local politicians were trying to shut it, right? But armed with the power of law, which she studied in law school for 4 years. She went back, she got rallied all her villagers, and she protested, and they asked for rehabilitation because they were shutting the quarry down, and on that pressure, they decided to not shut the quarry down. It is still running, it is still providing livelihood to all the people who live there. So I mean, just small stories like this, I mean, it can show like how much of a difference like just access to law makes, and why this is why diversity is important. This is why people from these communities need to come to law school, so they can get the strength of law from here and then go back and like change the world they come from. I guess that, yeah.
Mine is a little personal of an experience. I had, so when we got to law school, there was a picking of lots based on which roommates were picked. So I got my room with one person, and I discussed with her about my disability, and it was her first time ever interacting with a blind person. I asked her if she was really willing to stay with me and if there are any concerns that she has, and she seemed very positive on it in the beginning. Around 1 or 2 months into staying together, we had some other misunderstandings to do, which she ended up telling me that, you know, it's very hard for me to take up this responsibility. And that word kind of stayed with me because in the first 2 months, I was totally dependent on my peers to get to everywhere. Just like a footnote here, that the college administration was not helping much in terms of getting to the mess and also classroom. And sometimes I would skip meals or classes when I didn't have anybody to take me there. So when she said that she did not want to take the responsibility up, I was extremely taken aback, and I went to my father and we spoke about me using a cane. It's like a white stick that helps me walk. My father was initially very reluctant with the idea because I had just recently lost my eyesight, and the whole of that imagery of a blind person using a cane was very disturbing for him. It just meant, you know, pity and helplessness. And I was like, no, this is not helplessness, this is just self-reliance, and let's do this. So he went with me to campus, explained the layout, and I started walking on my own 2 months into the whole situation. And by the end of the 3rd year, that person and we became friends again. And there was a point where we did not have a very good laundry service in college, and there was a point where she used to force me to help me with my laundry. Idea being that people come with their own prejudices, and it's only when they start knowing you as people beyond your identities is when they start accepting your identity more. So this could probably be one more lesson for us today, that we look at people beyond their identities. It's not just a disabled person, it's a person with disability. It's just not a queer person, it's a person who happens to be queer. It's a person who happens to belong to a family, a Dalit Bahujan Adivasi family maybe. So we need to look at people as people first and then other things later on, because it really helps us change our approach and be better human beings to start off with, before we all are managing partners or lawyers or law students or anything else. We need to be human beings. I think that should be the biggest takeaway from this discussion.
I think a quick positive story. So one of my clients, it's a one of the larger conglomerates in India. We used to keep talking about transgender people. When you pick up people in your factories, it's not like they have all MBA degrees. जो factory चला रहे हैं, आप उनको भी तो skill सिखा रहे हो. These are automated factories, right? It's not like you're carrying the load, etc. So one of our clients, because we used to look at trans people on the road, and road में उनके साथ क्या होता है? There is, they are forced into sex work. There is exploitation, extreme harassment, along with that socioeconomic poverty that they have to manage. So one of our clients, they actually did an internship program for about 50 transgender people. They gave them an apprenticeship so that, they are not off the road for that 3 months, taught them how to operate the factory machinery, trained them, corporate language, dressing, everything, and then gave them jobs. And I think that, they didn't have to go out of their way. They were anyway skilling people who came from ITIs and people who didn't have any engineering background. They just had to think and make a specific program. But look at, because she's talked about how it can be life-changing for somebody. And look at how that respect, that dignity mobility in work can be life changing for somebody. They feel so happy, they feel they're part of a larger community, उनको इज्जत से बात करते हैं, they are not being forced कि आप ये कपड़े पहनो और ये men के लिए है, ये women के लिए. A lot of things are done to make them feel that they belong there. And more than anything else, that sense of self-independence, that they're earning a good wage, they have everything that a company gives, gratuity, pension, provident fund, social support, insurance, they have a good hostel to stay in, they are getting 4 meals in a day, which they're doing for all their workers. So I think it's just about noticing people and saying that merit means potential into opportunity, and if you can do that, anybody else can do that as well.
I think all of us, after hearing this, should be motivated enough to do our bit, and as much as we can contribute and be more sensitive and have a better mindset. If you have any questions,
can you give them a mic? Somebody has a question.
Thank you. Namaskar to all. My question is that the reality is totally different from that whatever we have presented today. Because suppose you are a selector and I am a student from Jharkhand, a rural background, and I am not enough to communicate in English, and I have command over the law, but my medium is Hindi. So every person love profit, not loss. So the people will be a aware person, and the person who is a good businessman, of course they will prefer profit. So why they will select the person of marginalized section or the person who was not good in English?
आपका नाम क्या है?
आनंद कुमार महतो.
आनंद, वो आपको इसलिए select करेंगे because your mind and your ability to analyze may be far better than somebody who speaks good English. And I think that is the difference, that we don't have to look at people कि वो कहाँ से आए हैं, क्या उनकी तनख्वाह थी, उनके घर की फैमिली इनकम कितनी थी. हमें देखना है कि वो कितनी अच्छी तरीके से काम कर सकते हैं. तो जो लोग नहीं कर रहे हैं वो उनका लॉस हो रहा है. अगर आप भारत में देखेंगे बहुत जगह हिंदी में ड्राफ्टिंग होती है, आप लोकल कोर्ट्स में जाएंगे पूरा काम उसमें होता है. तो जो मैंने स्टार्ट किया ना कि वो एरोगेंस है कि वो आपकी पोटेंशियल नहीं देख पा रहे हैं और उनको लगता है सिर्फ इंग्लिश में ही काम हो सकता है, वो उनकी गलत धारणा है. तो आप अपने में कभी कोई कमी महसूस नहीं करें, एंड यू अंडरस्टैंड कि लॉ करने के लिए स्पेसिफिकली एबिलिटी टू वर्क हार्ड जो सब कर सकते हैं, एबिलिटी टू एनालाइज वेल, एबिलिटी कि आप कट पेस्ट ना करें, नया ड्राफ्ट बनाएं, ये सब चीज़ें कोई भी प्रोफेशनल कर सकता है. दैट इज़ व्हाट वी हैव टू वैल्यू. ये जो चीज़ें ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंस लेने लगी हैं, वी ऑल हैव टू कॉल इट आउट एंड सेइंग Hindi, English does not matter, ability of the person should matter.
Ma'am, suppose if you want to be a Supreme Court lawyer, or you want to practice in Delhi High Court, or if you want to join a good law firm, of course, language is matter, because you are drafting in English. So, as you have said that if you have command in English, you will practice in lower court, because the High Court and Supreme Court doesn't provide opportunity to pleading in Hindi. And I must assure you that, of course, today you are saying that, of course, you will select on the basis of merits. But what are the factors? How can identify my hidden talent? Because the talent requires medium to express, and the medium is, of course, language, or basically language. Because suppose I am not communicated to speak in English, and someone is very good communicating in English, so of course we will select him and not me.
नहीं, ऐसा ज़रूरी नहीं है. And two things. One is that we are not saying that it may not lead to an hindrance, but we are trying to say ये surmountable hindrance है. They can be, speaking English is like driving a car. The more you do it, the better you get at it, right? So you can always enroll yourself in language speaking improvement classes. I must tell you, from my own batch in NLS Bangalore of 2005, 2 people went and studied in France and learned French, where the medium of education was French, and they did their LLM. One of them did their PhD in criminal law in French. So yes, she had to take extra classes, she had to learn that language because she was so bright that she could, that nothing could stop her from doing what she was doing. So I think दोनों तरफ से चाहिए. People who are giving opportunity, they must realize कि इंग्लिश आज उतनी अच्छी नहीं होगी, कल हो जाएगी. इट्स अ वर्क इन प्रोग्रेस एंड दे हैव टू ओपन द डोर टू पीपल हु आर लर्निंग इंग्लिश एंड विल गेट बेटर. एंड अपनी तरफ से भी अगर जो मीडियम ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन है फॉर्मल, यू कैन ऑल्सो मेक सम एक्स्ट्रा एफर्ट्स टू लर्न, गेट बेटर. बट वही मैं बोल रही हूँ, डोंट थिंक ऑफ इट एज अ थिंग विच इज़ मिसिंग इन यू. वी आर ऑल लर्निंग, वी आर ऑल गेटिंग बेटर. तो थिंक ऑफ इट एज अ गोल पोस्ट कि मुझे इसे और अच्छा करना है. आई हैव टू लर्न इट मच बेटर, आई विल बिकम मच बेटर. आई वॉज इन अ लॉ फर्म वेयर वन ऑफ द पार्टनर्स वॉज द ब्राइटेस्ट माइंड. वो जब तक साइन ऑफ नहीं करते थे ना, वो ट्रांजैक्शन होती नहीं थी. ही वॉज नॉट गुड इन इंग्लिश, बट इट डिड नॉट मैटर. वो द वे ही वुड एक्सप्लेन इट टू अस in Hindi, in whatever way, we just wanted his input. So I think when you are bright and you're good and you're a master of your craft, people will queue up to you and say, आप हमें बताओ, किसी भी लैंग्वेज में बताओ, आप हमें गाइड करो. So that should be your goal post. यार इंग्लिश ही तो है, गाड़ी चलाना सीख सकते हैं तो इंग्लिश क्यों नहीं सीख सकते? And you have to go forward with that approach.
Thank you.
I would first like to extend a very thank you to all our panelists. In my opinion, this session has really helped us believe that fostering inclusivity and celebrating diversity is really important. So thanks a lot to all of you for that. I would quickly invite Dhyani sir to present all our panelists with mementos. First we have Aparna ma'am. Pallavi ma'am. Anchal ma'am. Kritikar sir. Give them all a huge round of applause. To end on a positive note, I think embracing individuals from diverse backgrounds with unique perspectives enriches our collective understanding and drives innovation.